welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host, Rob. In today's video, I thought we'd take a look at some Baldur's Gate 3 because it's cool and it's new and it's a lot of fun. And, you know, for anybody who's new here, I usually talk about the tabletop version of Dungeons & Dragons. But, you know, let's talk about some Baldur's Gate 3. There are some substantial differences, so I want to talk about some of those. But I also want to talk about some basic stuff for anybody who maybe hasn't played Dungeons & Dragons before, and Baldur's Gate is kind of their intro to the game. Or maybe you've played back a long time ago, but you're not really familiar with 5th edition, which is what Baldur's Gate 3 is based on. So I wanted to talk first about proficiencies. So when you first make your character, you're going to have an origin, you're going to have your race, sub-race, and you're going to have your class, you're going to have like your background, and these things, and of course your attributes. These things are all going to give you combinations of, you know, whatever your racial abilities, class abilities, etc. So let's start with proficiencies though. These are mostly determined by your class, but there are races that will also give you some unique proficiencies. So if we look here at High Elf, they're going to get a cantrip, but you're also going to get proficiencies with long sword, short bow, and long bow by being a half elf, or by being an elf. You'll also have dark vision. You're going to have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic can't put you to sleep. So those are all kind of nice things too. Now, as a barbarian, which is what we now are, this isn't really that big of a deal. We pretty much have access to most weapons that we're going to need. But let's say we weren't playing a barbarian. Let's say that we wanted to play a wizard. There we go. Notice we still have the long sword, short sword, longbow, and short bow. These are actually because we're an elf. If we change our race to say like gnome, we no longer have these. Now, if you wanted to be able to just cast spells most of the time, that's not really a big deal. But there are sometimes items, or even at low levels, where we don't have a lot of good spells yet, where you might want to have a bow, or a longsword, or something along those lines. Armor proficiencies can be kind of a big deal. If you notice a dwarf, sub-race, we want shield dwarf. There we go. This gives us light armor and medium armor. So now our wizard, who normally had no armor, is now able to wear light and medium armor, and is going to be much more durable and more difficult to hit. This also means she's going to have to make less concentration saving throws to lose concentration on her spells, and in general, this can be a really nice perk. Every class has saving throw bonuses to 2 different stats here, right? So we've got a strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Your base class, whatever you start with, is going to determine what those are. So let's say we decided to go with fighter. We are going to have strength and constitution, and we are going to get bonuses to those things. So right there you can see it says +2 from proficiency and +2 from our constitution. Strength, we're getting +2 from our proficiencies, but we don't have proficiency in any of the others. Generally, think of like dexterity, constitution, and wisdom as like the big 3. These are kind of like the major saves. Dexterity is going to affect your ability to avoid like a lot of spells and AoE attacks. Constitution is going to be like poisons, as well as concentration saving throws if you're a caster. And wisdom is going to be like mind control, charm, illusion type effects. These 3 are pretty common. You'll face a lot more of those than you will the other 3. It's not that strength, intelligence, and charisma saves aren't also important. It's just that a lot less things target those abilities. Now, obviously those can still be very important, but in general, not as big of a deal. Every class will have proficiency in one of the 3 major ones and one of the 3 minor ones. As far as multi-classing, let's say you started as a fighter and then you multi-classed into something else, like, I don't know, like, let's say rogue, right? You are still going to have the saving throw proficiencies of the fighter. If you started rogue and then went fighter later, you would have the basic saving throws of the rogue, which is going to give you dexterity and intelligence. Things like extra attack. So this is one I actually saw a video somebody was talking about where they made like a level 4 fighter, a level 4 rogue, and a level 4 ranger because they wanted to be able to get all their ability score increases and feat choices. But it means you're never going to get extra attack. And I think that for people who are new to the game, they may not understand how big of a deal extra attack is. It is way more important than pretty much any feat you're going to get. So if you have to give up one ability score increase in order to get extra attack, it is generally worth it. There may be some really, really, really rare exceptions, but overall that's going to be a good rule of thumb. Also, your extra attacks don't stack. So if you get extra attack as a fighter and then you get extra attack from a barbarian, it doesn't work. You're still only going to have the one extra attack round. The only exception is fighters, who get a third attack round at level 11. Monks get some bonus action attacks where they can like punch people with a bonus action. That's not really part of your attack though, it's kind of a separate thing. Monks in 5th edition are not particularly strong in my opinion, but in the game here they've actually boosted up some of their abilities, which in my opinion makes them quite a bit better. So I'm actually curious to try out a monk after I finish my current playthrough. I'm actually playing a paladin right now. But apparently they upped the amount of key points you get and some other things like that. As far as just multi-classing in general, if you start, let's say I'm a wizard and then I decide I want to multi-class with cleric, for example. My wizard spells are still going to use intelligence, and my cleric spells are going to use wisdom. Now that might not be a bad thing if I change my stats around. I could have decent balance in both, but overall it's probably not going to be a great fit. However, if you look at classes like, say, the sorcerer, the warlock, the paladin, who's only a half caster, and the bard, these 4 all use charisma as their casting stat. So let's say you wanted to take sorcerer, who's going to start with proficiency on constitution saving throws, not a bad idea, giving you concentration saving throws. And then maybe you wanted to multi-class with either warlock or bard or even paladin. Then this is all going to be able to use your charisma for your spell casting. And you can get some really, really nice combinations with the charisma classes because they just fit together really well since they all use the same casting stat. Fighters. It's really easy to think that fighters are like big and strong and beefy, but you can also make dexterity fighters use like bows and things, which are really, really solid, and they multi-class very well with monk or rogue, who also use dexterity. Although really, fighter can multi-class with pretty much anything, they're pretty good. I should also point out that in the tabletop version, in order to multi-class in or out of classes, you have to meet certain ability score requirements. So in the case of a paladin, in order to become a paladin or leave paladin, you need 13 strength and 13 charisma. But in Baldur's Gate, you do not, which is really nice for multi-classing some of your minions, because it means you don't have to keep respecking them all the time, right? Some of your henchmen who join your party, they may not exactly have the stats you were looking for, but you know, you can either respect them in this game, or you can just say, who cares, I'm just gonna, you know, go into some other class. And because there's no minimum requirements, you can pretty much combine anything with anything, which is actually really nice. Spell slots. So this is something that isn't very intuitive necessarily, But some classes are basically full casters, and that includes your wizard, your sorcerer, your bard, your cleric, and your druid. It kind of also includes the warlock. Warlocks are sort of weird. They get their spell slots back on a short rest instead of a long rest like everybody else, but they have way fewer spell slots available at any given time, which is fine because half the time you're just going to be Eldritch Blasting anyway, so it'll work out. But just letting you know that warlocks are kind of their own separate entity, and if you multiclass in or out a warlock, the warlock spell slots do not contribute to the other class's spell slots. Whereas let's say you were, we'll go with sorcerer and bard, right? Let's say you took 5 levels of sorcerer and then you decided you wanted to become a bard. You're still going to have the spells of a 3rd level sorcerer and the spells of whatever level of bard you are, but you will combine the two classes together to determine what spell slots, which allows you to upcast stuff or whatever else, right? So if you had 5 here and 2 there, you've only got 1st level bard spells and 3rd level sorcerer spells, but you have 4th level spell slots. Paladins and rangers are only half casters. So if you had 6 levels of paladin, that's really only 3 levels for combining with, say, sorcerer or bard or whoever else, right? So in that previous example, let's say you had 6 levels of paladin because you wanted to get your aura of protection, and then you decided to go into sorcerer, and eventually you can get to level 6 sorcerer because the game caps out at 12. Well, you would have 3rd level sorcerer spells, you would have 2nd level paladin spells, but you would have 4th and 5th level spell slots that you could use to smite with or to upcast things, which is pretty interesting. Also, for anybody who is used to Dungeons and Dragons, the tabletop version, the half casters, and there's even 1/3 casters, which are the Eldritch Knight subclass and the Arcane Trickster Rogue subclass. There we go. These can both get spells too, depending on your subclass, but they are only 1/3 casters. Now, in the tabletop version, it rounds you down. So if you had, say, 5 levels of Eldritch Knight, you're still only a 1st level caster effectively. If you had 5 levels of Paladin, you are a 2nd level caster effectively. But in this game, it rounds you up at like 0.5 or better. So in that previous example, the 5th level Eldritch Knight would actually count as, they'd have like 1.67, and they would actually count as a 2nd level caster, and that 5th level Paladin would count as a 3rd level caster. And this can make a pretty big difference when you're trying to, get better spell slots and stuff, and maybe make minimum investments. Like let's say you wanted to go Eldritch Knight just because you wanted to get 5 levels for extra attack, but knowing that gives you 2 full spell levels effectively for multiclassing gives you some nice options. Like let's say maybe you then wanted to go into Wizard, and Wizard uses intelligence, Arcane or Eldritch Knight uses intelligence. That can be an effective combo. You've got Action Surge, which allows you to cast high-level spells, etc. The final thing I wanted to talk about in this video is bonus action spells. So one thing that's very interesting here, in the tabletop version again, you can't cast 2 leveled spells in the same turn unless you do it with Action Surge, which is technically a separate turn because you just take another turn essentially. But in this you can. So let's say I'm playing a cleric as a great example. And one of my companions needs healing. I could cast like Cure Wounds with my action, and I could then cast like Healing Word on an ally as a bonus action. I can do both those in the same turn. In the tabletop version, you cannot. So my personal plan, the character I'm playing here, let's X out of this and I will show you my current character. Oop. Load game. Sure, we'll just load the latest one. So currently I'm a level 6 paladin, and my plan from here is just to switch to sorcerer and go straight sorcerer the rest of the way. And sorcerers get an ability called meta magic, which allows you to kind of change the way you use some of your spells in different ways. but one of them is called Quicken Casting, and it allows you to turn a spell that normally takes an action to cast into a bonus action to cast.
First trial completed.
Yes, we're done the first trial. Congratulations, us. Oh, there we go.
Things have stayed interesting.
I'm getting close to 7. That's good. So once I multi-class, I will have the ability to start casting sorcerer spells as well. I can cast my paladin spells with the sorcerer spell slots and vice versa, because they're all getting combined into one. Right? Unlike, say, the warlock, like I mentioned. Although warlock you can switch back and forth as well, which is nice. It will open up a lot more options. I can also smite with those spell slots, which is nice as well. So, common abilities to use alchemy. I haven't really used much. That's okay though. Once I go into sorcerer, like I said, I'll have the ability to quicken cast stuff, which will allow me to turn some of these spells that, you know, usually require an action to cast into bonus actions. And because of the way the game treats bonus actions and actions, I should be able to still cast spells that require an action on the same turn, which is a huge boost. It, like I said, normally not how it works, but you know, I'm not gonna complain. So I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to work. It should be a strong combination. I mean, paladin and sorcerer, tried and true combination. They've been together forever in this game, and it's usually pretty strong. I'm multi-classing my rogue here. I should have done it earlier. I could. Wait a second. I'm looking for you. That was my daughter. I should have done him earlier. Currently, I have him at a 4 rogue and a 2 ranger. But I'm just going to keep going ranger from here. Probably. I might even grab fighter for action surge, and I'm going to go gloomstalker so he can hide in the shadows and then use sneak attack, which I think will be a pretty effective combination. Especially because Gloomstalker can also get an extra attack in the opening round, and eventually they'll get just an extra attack, period. Anyways, those are the things I wanted to talk about in this video. Thank you for watching. I'll make some more Baldur's Gate videos in the future because, you know, it's new and interesting, kind of exciting. It's also pretty challenging. I've had some really, really tough fights so far, which is nice to see. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.